The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion has more than its fair share of mysteries, NPCs, places, and things that the player can discover but never get any answers for. Sometimes we get these phenomena in the form of non-journal quests. The most recent example I can think of is a Ring of Keys. Over in the Pale Pass, the player comes across a note from a mysterious thief named GS. GS talks about stealing a ring from some wizard named Orthrazel. You end up tracking down the Circlet of Omnipotence, but never learn more about the thief, the wizard, or who this little key-to-key game was actually meant for. This example, though, is among the tamer ones that Oblivion has to offer. The scenario and place that I'd like to discuss today is far more mysterious and inexplicable than a non-journal quest. The subject is Nerystarl's house, the abandoned manor that has several undead creatures roaming its halls. First, I want to give a quick rundown of the exterior and interior of the home, all of the strange and totally normal things that could be found in and around the property. Then I'll talk about this Nerystarl and their place, or lack thereof, in Oblivion's lore. And finally, I'll discuss possible theories as to what Nerystarl's house could have been used for and the story behind it. For this video, I'll be using information found within the game itself and the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages. To begin the conversation, first we must go to the city of Skingrad. Wandering around the northern side of town, you'll come across quite a few homes. All of them seem quite lovely, spacious, and well taken care of. Nerystarl's house is no exception. Sandwiched in between Summit Mist Manor and Lazar Milvan's home is the estate in question. Nerystarl's residence seems like any other on this stretch of road. The front is in decent shape and nothing stands out whatsoever. However, it's when the player gets to the back of the house that the questions start to roll in. The most obvious thing that draws you in is the burnt tree. This tall plant is completely dead and it's an eyesore. It looks like it was brought over all the way from Kvatch. What makes it even weirder though is the totally normal and alive tree that's only a few meters away. What exactly happened here and why was only half of the backyard affected? There's even a downed branch, possibly from the burnt tree, as well as a hole in the wall that separates the property. Maybe this could be chalked up to bad weather or an unlucky lightning strike. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg, as the occurrences only get stranger and stranger. Walking up to Nerystarl's house, you'll notice that the doors are always locked and that gaining entry is considered trespassing. There are 3 ways to get inside the manor. Depending on your character's level, the difficulty of the locks may vary. For example, with my level 3 character, the front door was secured by a hard lock. Meanwhile, with my level 31 warrior, it was a very hard lock. The back was secured by a very easy lock on one playthrough, while it was a hard lock with the other. Interestingly, the back way is labeled as a reinforced door. Usually, when access points have this title, that means that whomever or whatever is on the other side doesn't want anyone coming in. Going on inside, this is where the rabbit hole truly begins. The house is completely trashed. The furniture has been tossed around. Dishes and cups are scattered across the floor. Cobwebs line the corners of the ground and walls. Containers are smashed, sacks are ripped, food is all over the place, and random pieces of wooden debris are lined up on the floor. Perhaps the strangest part to all of this, and the most eye-catching, are the undead NPCs. 3 leveled undead roam the halls of Nerystarl's house. These beings patrol the rooms and corridors. While it's not explicitly stated that they were the ones who wrecked the home, it feels heavily implied. Why are these creatures here and who summoned them? Looking through the wreckage and any surviving containers, everything seems normal. There's nothing in here that helps to paint any sort of picture as to what happened. So far, the manor only leaves the player with unanswered questions. But again, the mystery only continues to grow. Other than the ground floor and the second level, both of which are tied to the same zone, there's one area left to explore. Nerystarl's upstairs is also secured by a reinforced door. Gaining entrance, you're brought over to their private quarters. Inside, there are 2 more undead enemies. One of them will be a zombie, while the other is varied. After defeating all of your attackers, one important thing will stand out to you. There's no one here by the name of Nerystarl. The owner of the house is nowhere to be found. In fact, the place is completely void of any living NPCs. However, this zone gives us a better clue as to who Nerystarl, or whomever was living here, could have been. Starting with the lesser findings, there are 3 notable containers within the room. Two of them are chests. Each one holds some potentially interesting items. The third container is a hidden locked jewelry box. What you find in there is also level dependent. The only thing though is that it's hard to tell if these were added in for story elements or for the player's convenience. Simple treasures meant to entice the player. Well, these aren't super compelling finds, it's what's out in the open that'll grab your attention. Lying on one of the tables is a manual of spellcraft. What's more, there are several alchemical tools and books lined up by the northern wall. The fundaments of alchemy, a novice alembic, a calcinator, a retort, and a mortar and pestle. It would heavily appear as though the owner of the manor was at least interested in the arcane arts, if not an already full-fledged wizard. From here, the wheel begins to turn on what could have possibly happened in Neristarl's house. But before I get into that, there are a few more things I wanted to turn your attention to. For starters, did you notice anything out of the ordinary in the private quarters? Or rather, did you notice anything that was completely in the ordinary? The bed space and the side table with seating seem rather well kept. There aren't any flipped dishes, out of control cobwebs, pieces of wood, or smashed furniture in their vicinities. There's even a silver pitcher and a bowl that are neatly placed at the foot of the bed. In a house that's been ravaged and in an area that contains violent undead, why are there untouched spaces? I'll get into that in just a bit, as there's still some more housekeeping. Even though Neristarl owns a house in town, the backyard is falling apart, and surely the locals can smell and hear the undead on the inside, no one bats an eye to it. Their name nor their house ever pops up as a dialogue prompt. There's only one single NPC in the entirety of Oblivion who name drops Neristarl and their manor. It's the Argonian thief, Emusai, and it's during the Thieves Guild quest, Lost Histories. However, he only refers to those subjects as a waypoint for the quest item. He simply tells the player to check behind Neristarl's house for the book. While it's a small detail, to me, the general relaxed nature and lack of awareness lightly implies that the house isn't supposed to be a focal point for the city. It isn't common knowledge that it's abandoned, trashed, and overrun with undead. That little point will also play a role in the theories to come. The final weird phenomenon is the music that plays in both zones of the house. While the player is in the lower section, the standard dungeon music can be heard. Meanwhile, when the player ascends to the top level, the usual city-based music plays. Why the different tunes? Even though both sections have hostiles, why do we only hear the dungeon music on the first floor? Well, there might be an answer for that, but now it's time to start piecing together this puzzle. So, what do we know? We know that Neristarl, as well as the house, are not notable for the citizens of Skingrad. We know the doors are locked and a couple of them are reinforced. The house has been wrecked and there are undead all over the place. This Neristarl is nowhere to be found, and whoever lives here has an interest in alchemy and possibly magic. Now it's time to start making some assumptions. Number 1, the name Neristarl is structured to sound like a Mer's name, specifically an Altmer's. While I can't say with utmost certainty, it runs closer to the more masculine sounding High Elf names, so for now I'd place Neristarl as a male High Elf. Given the breadcrumbs left behind, i.e. the alchemy tools and the manual of spellcraft, I'd wager that he's a practicing mage. Now, one important common theme amongst certain spellcasters is the presence of undead. 9 times out of 10, if there are undead NPCs by a wizard, said wizard has been dabbling in necromancy. Given the state of Neristarl's house, I think it's safe to say that he either couldn't control the undead or that he was responsible for summoning them, both of which are key points to the potential story. Speaking of which, it's now time to get into the possible theories. The very first one I wanted to discuss, while kind of a buzzkill, could have the highest probability of reigning true. It's entirely possible that the developers added this in just because. Perhaps they wanted to throw in a bit of a surprise for the player. It's a tragedy or mystery in Skingrad that's common knowledge to the NPCs, but not to the player. Those who dare venture inside of the manor get met with a dangerous scenario. There are enough clues and trails left in Neristarl's house for the player to piece together their own headcanon. Bethesda often leaves mysteries like these in their games, and a lot of them are never meant to be solved. Sometimes it's better off like that. They help the player build their own world and non-canonical universe. They're meant for immersion and creativity. A little open-ended scenario can go a lot further than most of us think. So yes, while sort of meta and kind of the whole point of this video, the first theory as to what's going on here is that Bethesda wanted to leave it up to the player's interpretation and to have us guessing for years to come. There was never a planned story for the house and its owner. It was just meant as a template for the audience's creativity. Now, let's get into the ideas that are more specific. This second theory is where my mind went to when I first stumbled across the house. Neristaro was meant to be involved in a small side quest. What that side quest was supposed to be is the real question. Maybe someone in the city of Skingrad asks the player to venture inside the home. This could have been meant to simply check up on the Altmer. Clearly, through the presence of the cobwebs, the house was lost some time ago. Neristaro might not have been seen in public for quite some time, and that's what spawned the wellness check. Or maybe it was a fetch quest. The premise could have been to take an item from one of his chests. After all, there are 3 important looking containers in the room. It could have been a big ticket item to come out of a chest or a trinket from the jewelry box. Another idea is that the player might have been sent into the home in order to clear out all of the undead. Perhaps someone from the castle gives the player this task. The town either knows that the house is abandoned or it further ties into the whole wellness check idea. But regardless, they hear strange noises coming from the inside. After discovering the undead and wiping them out, the player reports their success back to the court and the quest is completed. From there, the house is cleaned up, repaired, and sold off to a new owner. It's also possible that Neristaro was the bad guy in this quest. Maybe he was a dark wizard and the goal was to eliminate him. That might explain why his bed and seating area are untouched, or rather tidy. The wizard's AI packaging would have had him spend most of his time in the upstairs region. The main areas he would have used were perhaps the bed and the small side table setup, sleeping during the night and reading during the day. Honestly, in terms of a specific side quest, the possibilities are truly endless, and that's what makes it even harder to piece together the story. With no background knowledge on Neristaro and how he interacted with the town, all guesses are created equal. However, there is one theory that I'm quite partial to. The idea is that Neristaro was meant to play a part in the Mages Guild questline. The more I think on it, the more I believe that Erthor's role in the Skingrad recommendation was meant for Neristaro. Essentially, instead of rescuing Erthor from Bleakflat's cave, Neristaro was meant to be checked up on in his home. The wizard was a novice in his craft. This explains the novice alchemy setup in the Manual of Spellcraft. Those are essentially instructions on how to do magic. The mage practiced a ton of different skills, but ended up causing problems around the hall. Adrian Beren told Neristel to hone his skills at home. Enough time goes by, no one hears from him, and that's when the player gets sent in. The house ends up getting overrun with undead, exactly like what happens to Erthor in Bleakflat's cave. From here, there are a few different potential outcomes. The first is that maybe Neristaro was supposed to end up dead. Maybe, unlike the Bosmer's rescue, we were supposed to find the Altmer's dead body. This of course would have run the recommendation quest in a different direction, and maybe that's why it was ultimately scrapped. Another possibility, one in which I truly love, is that Neristaro is actually the zombie. Don't you think it's strange that almost all of the undead are either spirits or skeletons, while only one of them is a zombie, and said zombie is in the living quarters? With Neristaro nowhere to be found, and dead bodies are all that's left in his home, my best guess is that he's the rotten corpse. Necromancy gone wrong, or necromancy gone right is the true question. Was he one of the wizards that secretly practiced dark arts in the wake of its ban, or was he a victim of a necromancer attack? Either way, if one of these was Bethesda's true intention, maybe it was scrapped because they didn't want the necromancers to play a part in the story yet. The recommendations are meant to display each hall's own set of politics, hierarchies, and problems. They don't really deal with the overarching theme of the questline, and they follow their own side plots. The only one that does feed into it is Shadenhall, and perhaps that's where they wanted to draw the line. Then lastly, there's the possibility that the player was supposed to come across a living Neristaro. You save him from his undead attackers and bring the mage back to the hall. It's pretty much how the quest runs now with Airthor, and maybe the house idea was scrapped because it was too easy. Maybe the devs wanted the player to venture off into an actual dungeon, fight more enemies, and gain more experience. While the music choice in the house is among the most inexplainable things here, that could be why the lower level has dungeon music and the upper has town music. The lower was considered a small dungeon crawl, and the upper is where you meet a friendly face. There's also the possibility that this quest was meant for another point in the story, perhaps not for the recommendation, but for when the war against necromancy is at its peak, when Mannimarco is slaughtering guild halls, turning associates into thralls, and convincing guildmates to fight for his side. Maybe that's when Nerystarl and his haunted manor were meant to play a role. Perhaps it was scrapped for something bigger and bolder, like the Bruma Hall massacre. If this whole setup wasn't meant to be its own little side quest, then my best guess is that it's cut content from the Mages Guild. Everything about it screams wizard in distress. The damaged backyard, likely a cause of some powerful destruction magic. The undead in the house, likely a conjuration of some necromancer. Then there's a lack of a homeowner, an NPC who was removed from the game because their greater purpose was taken away. A wizard whose corpse was removed from the premises as to not reveal what they were truly meant for. Or, my favorite, the homeowner who's actually in front of the audience the entire time. The lone unnamed zombie is actually the long-lost High Elf. They made enemies with the wrong people and paid the price for it. Like I said before, the possibilities are truly endless, and we'll honestly never know how hot or cold we are with all our theories. Before signing off, there's one last idea that I want to present. While it's more so a joke, the coincidences are simply too vast to ignore. What are the odds that an abandoned house that contains alchemy supplies and a bunch of undead are right across from an alchemy shop whose owner is an alleged necrophile? At first, I laughed it off. I thought, that's funny, great timing and placement with all of that. And then I thought, hey, that is great timing and placement. I don't see any graves dug up at the local cemetery, and she doesn't leave the city. Her routine doesn't make her go into Nerystarl's house, but maybe there's supposed to be some sort of implication. An unwritten, unspoken nudge that says, hey, maybe it's worth looking into. Of course, though, that would be kind of bizarre, but also kind of perfect. It really is up to the player's interpretation. With that, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what was supposed to happen in Nerystarl's manor over in Skingrad. Do you think it was a red herring from Bethesda, a cut side quest, a cut Mages Guild quest, or something comedic and darker for Falanu Halalu? I'd love to know down below. Thank you everyone so much for watching. Members, I really appreciate all of your support. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, keep on adventuring.